The steel door didn't slam. It clicked, a mechanical, final sound, followed by the heavy thud of the electronic deadbolt. Michael Carver stood in the center of the 6x8 concrete box. He was 62 years old, and without his robe, his shoulders slumped forward, making him look small in the oversized orange jumpsuit. He didn't want to turn around. He stared at the stainless steel toilet/sink combination, counting the rivets. 1, 2, 3. "You're blocking the light." The voice was gravel, low. Michael turned. On the bottom bunk sat a man with gray streaking his temples, and a thick scar running through his left eyebrow. He was reading a paperback with the cover torn off. He didn't look up. He turned a page with a thumb that was missing a nail. It was Eric Branson. Case number 409B. The People versus Branson. 30 years for second-degree murder. Michael's mouth went dry. His tongue felt like sandpaper. He waited for Eric to scream, to lunge, to strangle him. He braced for the impact. Eric wet his finger and turned another page. "Top bunk's yours," Eric said, eyes still on the text. "Don't step on my pillow when you climb up. I hate dirt on my pillow." Michael stared at the man he had buried alive. He gripped the metal frame of the bunk, his knuckles white, realizing that to this man, he wasn't even worth killing. He was just a nuisance blocking the reading light. If you're new here, subscribe for more true stories that reveal what happens when the truth collides with power. Eric Branson's hands were stained with 10W30 motor oil. Even after scrubbing with pumice, the grease lived in the creases of his knuckles. He sat at the defense table, picking at a loose thread on a suit that was 2 sizes too big, bought from a thrift store for the trial. The prosecutor held up Exhibit A, a snap-on torque wrench, heavy, chrome. "Found in the victim's shop," the prosecutor said, walking the jury line. "Covered in the defendant's prints, the very tool used to crush Frank Keller's skull." Eric leaned to his public defender. "It's my wrench. I left it there Tuesday. I told them." "Shh," the defender whispered, checking his phone under the table. Judge Michael Carver sat on the bench, scrolling through the lunch menu on his iPad hidden behind a stack of case files. He glanced at the clock on the wall, 11:45 a.m. If he hurried this along, he could make his tea time at the country club by 4. "Objection," the defender said half-heartedly. "Circumstantial." "Overruled," Michael said, not looking up. "Let's move it along, counselor. The jury looks bored." Eric looked at the judge. He didn't see a monster. He saw a man checking his watch. When the verdict came down, guilty, Eric didn't cry. He watched Judge Carver sign the sentencing order with a gold fountain pen, a quick, practiced scrawl. Carver capped the pen, took a sip of water, and called the next case number before the bailiff had even pulled Eric's hands behind his back. Corruption wasn't a grand conspiracy. It was laziness and a pack of nicotine gum. Laura Pierce, a junior clerk in the appeals office, was eating a tuna sandwich at her desk when she spilled a drop of mayo on the Branson file. As she wiped it off, she noticed the photo of the crime scene surveillance log. Detective Victor Hines, the lead on the case, had noted the time of death as 9 p.m. But in the background of the crime scene photo, reflected in the shop window, was the neon clock of the laundromat across the street. It read 11:15. Eric Branson had been clocked into his shift at the warehouse, 5 miles away, at 10:45 p.m. Laura dug deeper. She found the lost toxicology report in a mislabeled folder in the basement. The victim hadn't just been beaten, he had high levels of methamphetamine in his system. Detective Hines knew the victim was a dealer. A dealer meant a drug hit. A drug hit meant a complex investigation. Framing the mechanic with the wrench was a one-day job. When Laura slapped the file on Judge Carver's desk, he didn't gasp, he threw up. He retched into his office wastebasket, the bile burning his throat. He looked at the photo, then at his own signature on the warrant. When the indictments came down, they swept up the detective, the DA, and the judge who rubber-stamped it all. Negligence. reckless disregard. Sentence: 18 months. General population. Cell 214 was a pressure cooker. For 3 weeks, Eric and Michael lived in a silence so thick it felt like humidity. Michael learned quickly that he was prey. He was the gavel. In the cafeteria, inmates bumped him, spilling his tray. In the showers, the water always seemed to turn ice cold when he stepped in. One night, 3 men from D Block cornered Michael near the phones. They didn't want to kill him, they wanted to play. "Your Honor," a man with a spiderweb tattoo on his neck sneered. He sneered Michael into the brick wall. Michael's glasses skittered across the floor. "I got a motion to dismiss. You gonna hear it?" A fist connected with Michael's gut. He crumpled, gasping for air, curling into a ball on the concrete. "Hey." The word was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the cell block. Eric Branson stood 10 feet away. He was leaning against a pillar, peeling an orange. He didn't look aggressive, he looked bored. "Guard shift changes in 40 seconds, Eric said. "Officer Miller is on tonight. He's got a bad knee and a worse temper. You boys want to lose yard time for a piece of trash like him?" The attackers hesitated. They looked at the clock, then at Eric. They knew Eric ran the yard's barter system. They knew he was useful. The spiderweb tattoo guy spat on Michael's back. "Lucky," he muttered. They scattered just as the heavy buzzer sounded. Michael wheezed, reaching blindly for his cracked glasses. He looked up at Eric. "Thank you," Michael croaked. Eric walked past him, stepping over Michael's legs as if he were a pile of dirty laundry. "I didn't do it for you," Eric said, walking back to the cell. "I did it because Miller tosses the cells when there's a fight. I don't want him touching my stuff." The shift didn't happen with a handshake. It happened with insomnia. Michael couldn't sleep. The guilt was a physical weight pressing on his chest. He spent his nights pacing the 3 steps allowed in the cell. "Sit down," hissed from the darkness. "You're moving the air. It's cold enough." "I can't," Michael whispered. "I keep seeing the files, Hines, the timestamps. How many others, Eric? How many others did I send here?" Eric sat up. The springs squeaked. "You want to make yourself useful, Judge? Or you just want to whine?" Michael stopped pacing. "What?" Eric reached under his mattress and pulled out a flattened cardboard box. Inside were stacks of handwritten papers. "I talk to people in the yard," Eric said. "Guys who got railroaded by Hines. I write down what they say, dates, badge numbers, who was holding the wrench." He tossed the stack onto Michael's bunk. "I know the street," Eric said. "I know who lies and who doesn't. But I don't know the law. I don't know how to file a motion that doesn't get thrown in the trash." Michael picked up a piece of paper. It was a crude affidavit, written in pencil. "You need to cite Brady versus Maryland," Michael murmured, his eyes scanning the page. "And this isn't hearsay. This is a statement against penal interest. It's admissible." Michael looked at Eric. For the first time, the mechanic was looking him in the eye. "You got a pen?" Michael asked. Eric kicked a plastic Bic stashed under his bunk across the floor. Michael sat on the floor, using the toilet lid as a desk. "Tell me about the guy in cell 309.
They worked in shifts. During the day, Eric gathered intel in the yard, trading cigarettes for case details, vetting stories, separating the liars from the victims. At night, Michael drafted the writs. Michael's hands, once manicured, were now covered in ink stains and paper cuts. He lost 20 pounds. His skin turned sallow, but his eyes were sharp. They targeted Detective Hines's cases first. Michael found the pattern. "He never testifies about the initial stop," Michael whispered one night, pointing at 3 different files spread on the floor. "He always claims the body cam malfunctioned. Every single time he finds drugs in a trunk, the camera battery dies." "That's not a malfunction," Eric said, sharpening a pencil with his thumbnail. "That's policy." "It's a pattern of practice," Michael said. "If we can prove it in one, the others fall like dominoes." They sent the packet out through Laura Pierce. 2 weeks later, the prison grapevine exploded. A lawyer from the Innocence Project visited 3 inmates in one day. But the victory wasn't sweet. One afternoon, Michael was scrubbing the cell floor. Eric was on the bunk. "Why didn't you look at me?" Eric asked. Michael froze. He didn't ask when, he knew. "It was a Tuesday," Michael said softly, staring at the wet concrete. "I played golf on Tuesdays. If I looked at you, if I really looked at you, I might have seen a person, and that would have slowed me down." Eric didn't respond. He just stared at the ceiling. "I was efficient," Michael whispered. "I was proud of being efficient." Eric dropped a pair of clean socks onto Michael's head. "You missed a spot in the corner," Eric said. "Scrub it again." Michael's release date came 6 months before Eric's exoneration hearing. Processing was quick. They gave Michael his civilian clothes, the suit he came in with, now hanging loosely on his frame. He walked out into the world, and the world spat him back out. He applied for paralegal jobs. Rejected. He applied to file clerk positions. Rejected. He was a felon, a disgraced judge, a pariah. He spent his nights in a cheap motel, eating noodles from a cup, staring at the wall. He could have disappeared. He could have moved to Florida and lived quietly on his remaining savings. But every Tuesday, he went to the prison. Eric was there, behind the reinforced glass. Michael pressed his hand against the glass. "I'm working on the appeals," Michael said through the phone. "I'm sleeping in the law library. The librarian lets me stay late because she remembers when I was your honor." Eric looked at him. "Don't get soft out there, Carver." 6 months later, the courtroom was packed. Detective Hines sat in the back, no longer chewing gum, looking pale and sweaty. Michael Carver sat at the defense table, not as a judge, but as an unpaid assistant to the defense team. When Judge Harrison read the order vacating Eric's conviction, the room erupted. Eric stood up. He didn't smile. He turned and looked at Michael. They didn't hug. This wasn't a movie. Eric walked over, extended a calloused hand, and shook Michael's ink-stained fingers. "We got work to do," Eric said. The office was a converted storage room above a bakery. It smelled of yeast and stale coffee. File boxes were stacked floor to ceiling. "Pending review" was scrawled in Sharpie on the side of 50 different boxes. Michael, wearing a cardigan and reading glasses, was hunched over a laptop, typing furiously. "Carver," Eric called out from the other room. "This kid in the Rodriguez case, he says the confession was coerced. No recording." Michael didn't look up. "Check the duty roster. See if Hines was the booking officer that night." "Already did," Eric said, dropping a file on Michael's desk. "He was. And there's a 2-hour gap in the logs." Michael paused. He looked at the file. Then he looked at the clock. It was late. He was tired. His back ached. In his old life, this was the moment he would have skimmed the page, signed the order, and gone to play golf. Michael closed the laptop halfway. He took off his glasses. He turned his chair and looked at Eric. Really looked at him. He saw the gray hair, the scar, the years stolen. "You want to go home, Eric?" Michael asked. "We can finish tomorrow." Eric poured 2 mugs of black coffee. He set one down next to Michael's laptop. "I am home," Eric said. He tapped the file. "Read it again, Judge. Take your time." Michael smiled, a genuine, tired smile. He put his glasses back on. He opened the file, and he began to read, line by line, word by word, because this time, he wasn't going to miss a thing. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe and turn on notifications. We tell real cases that expose the human cost of justice and the people who fight to make it right.